I really am so sick of coaches within the manifestation field or space constantly telling people to get into a high vibe state. I mean, what does the high vibe state even mean, anyhow? Be positive all the time, feel good all the time, keep your energy high, don't think negatively, don't be sad, don't be doubtful. And how is that even possible anyway? Because if you're anything like me, you might start believing that if they weren't in a constantly happy state, grateful state, confident, excited, abundant, emotionally elevated, especially if you don't have evidence of these in your life, then perhaps this means you would somehow be failing at manifestation. But what if that's not actually true? What if trying to stay high vibe all the time is the one thing that creates emotional exhaustion, disconnection, and resistance? I mean, very few people stop to question what high vibe actually even means. I know I did, until I realized it was impossible to maintain. Does it mean you are genuinely aligned? With what? Or are you emotionally performing positively because you're afraid your manifestation will somehow disappear if you feel human for 5 minutes, especially when you are encountering the ups and downs of normal everyday life experiences, like when you, receive a fine, or when a good friend upsets you in some way, for instance. And honestly, is it even realistic to feel positive all the time? Because life itself doesn't work that way. Human beings are emotional creatures. We move through cycles of emotions, through grief, through stress, through joy, through fear, through expansion, through uncertainty, through healing and frustration and excitement. And yet, modern manifestation culture has convinced people that normal human emotions somehow blocks manifestation. So they start suppressing themselves and their feelings. The moment sadness appears, they panic. The moment doubt appears, they think, oh no, I'm ruining my manifestation. And this creates something incredibly important that almost nobody talks about. It causes emotional resistance. The truth is, suppressing emotion is not alignment, it's disconnection. And this is where manifestation teachings can unintentionally become damaging, because people begin treating emotions like enemies instead of information. But emotions are not the problem, the relationship with them is. In fact, I believe trying to stay high vibe all the time might actually be pushing your manifestation further away. One of the biggest misunderstandings in manifestation is the idea that alignment means emotional perfection. It means happy-clappy all the time, but it doesn't. Alignment is not about never feeling fear, never doubting, never getting triggered, never getting tired, crying, never questioning things. And in fact, I've come to realize that you often need to go through these emotions to upgrade yourself in readiness to receive your manifestation. And so alignment is about honesty. It's about emotional congruence. It's about whether your internal world is becoming more connected, more self-aware, more regulated, and more compatible with the reality you want to experience. Because someone can smile all day, repeat affirmations consistently, and still feel terrified underneath the surface. This isn't alignment. This is emotional masking. And your subconscious mind always responds more favorably, more strongly to what feels true than what is forced. This is why people can spend years acting positive while internally feeling anxious, disconnected, exhausted, or afraid. Their conscious mind says, I'm abundant, but their nervous system says, this feels unsafe. Here's the thing, manifestation is deeply connected to the nervous system, because your nervous system determines what feels safe, what feels familiar, what's believable, and what you can emotionally sustain. And that's why forcing positivity doesn't create long-term alignment. Safety does. Self-trust does. Emotional regulation does. Authenticity does. Internal stability does. And sometimes true alignment actually feels quieter than people expect. Not euphoric or manic or obsessively excited. Not turning your head towards the next shiny thing for the dopamine hit. I mean, alignment is just grounded, calm, clear. It's certain and stable. Perhaps the deepest emotional state is not emotional intensity at all. It's inner neutrality. I actually think contentment is one of the least mentioned and arguably most misunderstood emotional states in manifestation, and possibly the most powerful. Think about it for a moment. When you're content, you're not desperately chasing anything. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not constantly checking whether it's working or not. You're not emotionally negotiating with the universe every 5 minutes. Contentment isn't giving up. It isn't settling. It isn't becoming passive. Contentment is what happens when your nervous system finally stops arguing with the present moment. And that's incredibly powerful, because when you're no longer emotionally fighting where you are, you suddenly free up enormous amounts of energy to move towards where you're going. I often think about it a bit like this. What if I offered you £1,000,000 tomorrow, but told you that for the next 6 months you had to spend every single day worrying about whether it was coming, checking your phone every 5 minutes, analyzing every feather, every angel number, every dream, and every conversation, constantly wondering whether you've done enough to deserve it? Would that actually be the life you wanted? And more importantly, would those emotions be congruent with the promise of the guaranteed reward if you knew you would get the £1,000,000? Of course not. The goal was never the anxiety. The goal was always the life beyond it. And that's what contentment begins to create. It allows you to enjoy your life before your circumstances have completely caught up with it. One of the things I've often noticed after 14 years studying manifestation is that people often confuse desire with dissatisfaction. They think if they become content, they'll stop manifesting. They think contentment somehow kills your ambition. I actually think the opposite is true. Contentment doesn't remove desire. It removes feelings of desperation. You can still have enormous dreams. You can still want to build a business, meet your soulmate, write that book, move home, or create extraordinary wealth. The difference is that your happiness is no longer held hostage until those things arrive. You stop saying, I'll finally relax when, I'll finally feel worthy when, I'll finally be happy when. Instead, you begin living from an emotional state you thought the manifestation was going to give you in the first place. And here's what fascinates me most. When people become genuinely content, something very interesting often happens. Their decisions become clearer because their mind is clearer. Their intuition becomes stronger. They stop forcing, chasing. They stop trying to control every outcome because contentment creates space. It quietens the constant noise of fear. And it's often in that quietness that people begin recognizing opportunities where they were emotionally too overwhelmed to notice before. Perhaps that's because the subconscious speaks most clearly when the mind finally becomes still enough to listen. Which is why I don't think contentment is the opposite of manifestation. I think contentment is one of the clearest signs that your nervous system has stopped living in survival mode and has started trusting that life is happening with you rather than against you, through you. And ironically, that quiet state is often much closer to true alignment than the emotional roller coaster we've been taught to chase. The most aligned state is often not excitement. It's either contentment or calm certainty. Now, what is particularly interesting about studying manifestation for so long is that you begin to see what works and what doesn't work. You get to know what signs tell you when your manifestation is about to drop. There is one particular sign that happens just before manifestation arrives, and it's what I call the dropdown in my mapping manifestation framework. It's stage 8. It's the moment where obsession softens, control loosens, urgency fades, and suddenly, instead of chasing the manifestation emotionally, you begin feeling internally anchored within yourself. You stop checking, you stop panicking constantly, you stop trying to force signs constantly. And for many people, this calmness feels unfamiliar at first because they've mistaken emotional intensity for alignment. But emotional intensity is not always trust. Sometimes it's attachment, fear, hyperfixation, and control. And this is why so many people become addicted to the emotional high of manifestation content. They think the goal is to stay emotionally elevated all the time. But very often, nervous system exhaustion eventually follows because human beings are not designed to sustain constant emotional intensity. In fact, successful manifestation does not come from becoming emotionally superhuman. It's about becoming emotionally integrated. Integrated people allow themselves to feel. They don't collapse when emotions arise. They don't shame themselves for being human or panic every single time doubt appears. Instead, they learn to move through emotions without identifying with them permanently. And ideally, they transcend these challenges, which is far more powerful, by the way, than mere resilience. But that's another video. But can you see the difference? Because feeling doubt occasionally does not mean you are aligned with failure. Feeling sadness occasionally does not mean your manifestation is blocked. Feeling fear occasionally does not mean the universe has abandoned you altogether. It just means you're human. Feeling negative emotions automatically blocks manifestation. This is one of the biggest misconceptions online right now. Whilst I agree the fastest manifestations I have received, and for your information, I once manifested a holiday to Spain within 2 hours. There was absolutely no doubt at all in my mind. However, this does not mean I can't manifest when I do have internal doubts. I do. It just means you need to upgrade your nervous system to the level of your manifestation. You see, this would suggest manifestation works like some fragile energetic equation where one bad day destroys your future seeds from flourishing. In actuality, this way of thinking just creates fear-based manifestation, not empowered manifestation, because now people are monitoring every single thought, every single emotion, reaction, behavior. Instead of feeling free, they become emotionally imprisoned by the process itself. But manifestation isn't about becoming emotionally perfect. It's about becoming more conscious, more aware, intentional, more connected to yourself. More transcendent, yes, absolutely. And so one of the most powerful things you can do is stop resisting your own humanity, because resistance amplifies emotional suffering. What you suppress often grows louder internally. And interestingly, many people notice manifestations begin moving more naturally once they stop emotionally fighting themselves all the time, because they finally can relax. They stop trying to earn manifestations through emotional performance, and they start beginning to build something more important: self-trust. You are not supposed to be happy all the time. In fact, you're not designed to be happy all the time. And honestly, some of the most transformative periods of manifestation do feel deeply uncomfortable. Not because something is going wrong, but because identity change is happening. You are releasing old beliefs. You are releasing old emotional patterns, attachments, and fears. Essentially, you are releasing the old version of yourself, and growth can feel destabilizing before it feels expansive. This is why your manifestation journey very often includes confusion, emotional waves, uncertainty, grief, exhaustion, triggers, identity shifts, especially during the in-between. When I reference the in-between, I'm talking about the period between placing your desired outcome and when it actualizes in your three-dimensional reality. Because the whole journey is about who you become when your reality has not fully changed yet. Internally, something already has changed the moment you desire it. And this is where many people accidentally abandon themselves, because they think, if I was truly aligned, I wouldn't feel this way. But healing and expansion are not always linear. Sometimes becoming more aligned actually means becoming more emotionally honest first, because truth creates coherence, and coherence creates stability. Stability creates sustainable manifestation, not fake positivity, not emotional suppression, and not pretending. So the question isn't really, are you high vibe enough? That's not it at all. The real question is what, or more precisely, who are you actually aligning with? Because this changes everything. Are you aligning with self-trust, peace, authenticity, emotional safety, worthiness, grounded certainty, internal stability? Are you aligning with the person who already has the desired outcome now? Or are you aligning with the fear of losing manifestation? Because many people aren't actually chasing the desire itself. They're chasing relief from anxiety, and those are two very different energies. The people who sustain manifestations long term are usually not the people who are emotionally high vibe all the time. They are the people who become internally secure enough to hold what they once desired. And that often looks much quieter than social media suggests. It looks like calmness, emotional resilience, self-awareness, trust, flexibility, internal safety, psychological safety, groundedness, emotional flexibility, inner safety. It looks more like contentment, not constant emotional intensity. And honestly, I think this is why so many people are burning out in the manifestation culture right now, and in life, if I'm honest, because they're trying to maintain an impossible emotional standard instead of learning how manifestation actually works. Manifestation is not about becoming less human. It's about becoming more deeply connected to yourself. Your emotions are not your enemy. Your humanity is not blocking you. And alignment is not emotional perfection either. It's emotional honesty, self-awareness, and becoming internally compatible with the life you want to sustain. So if you've been exhausting yourself trying to stay high vibe all the time, maybe this is your permission to stop performing positively all the time and instead begin building something much more powerful. Inner coherence. Because sometimes the most aligned state is not euphoric at all. Sometimes it feels like peace. This is why I believe contentment is the most powerful state for manifestation that no one is talking about. Now, if this resonates with you, do let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt pressured to stay high vibe and positive all the time during manifestation or otherwise, and found yourself absolutely exhausted? Also, if you like this video, please click the thumbs up to like, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to learn more effective ways to manifest. And if you want to understand more about the real stages of manifestation, the in-between, the signs, emotional shifts, and what's actually happening during that in-between process, you are welcome to join my free Mapping Manifestation webinar. The link is in the description for my website. Blessings will follow because the universe always says yes.